Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Julie Bocanegra. I'm the board president this year, and on behalf of the rest of the board of directors, and I'd like to take a minute to introduce our board directors that are here this evening. Rob Perkins, who's our vice president. Victoria Bradford. Jenny Gronwalt. And then Jacqueline Witherspoon is also going to join us this evening. She's at her son's basketball game. Right? We can't miss those basketball games. So she texted me 30 some minutes ago and said it was halftime. So I would imagine we're going to see her any time now. So we're excited that you have all come to be part of this important night. And we also want to thank Superintendent Boyd for being here. And we're excited to hear your vision for the school district as we come up into the next year. So I wanted to give everybody a little bit of context about what got us here tonight. Hiring a superintendent is one of the most important responsibility that the board has. We also understand that we're currently looking for a permanent superintendent now because our previous decisions on this role weren't as successful as the board had expected. It's our job to select the best person to lead our district, the right person for our students, staff, and families. The current process to find our next superintendent began back in late 2021 when we began the search for the interim superintendent. At that time, we knew we needed more than a caretaker to fill the role for a month or two. We needed someone who could step in right away and lead the district as a true superintendent. We decided then to bring in someone that we thought had the potential to be here long-term. Someone with superintendent experience and someone who wanted to be at Evergreen Public Schools. In December of 2021, we reached out to contacts across Washington State and beyond. This included current superintendents, former superintendents, search companies, other school board members across the state, and community members. We asked for suggestions and input about potential candidates. From these suggestions, we reached out to potential candidates, and at that time, John Boyd's name rose to the top of everyone's list. He came recommended by multiple groups. We held a formal interview with the board of directors, and based on that interview, we felt good about his candidacy for the interim. John had a second formal interview with district leaders and a few building principals. And based on that formal interview with the board, feedback from the interview with district and building level leaders, as well as the strong recommendations from references from across the state, we made the decision to appoint John as interim superintendent. Now, when we appointed John as the interim superintendent in late 2021, we did not have the luxury of time. We needed someone immediately that we weren't able to get broad stakeholder feedback and input from the community. Once we got into a place where we felt comfortable, we started the process of securing a permanent superintendent. We knew we wanted to make sure the process included input from students, family, and staff members. To be clear, with John, we've had a year's worth of consistent input from students, staff, and families, and community members because he's been our interim superintendent. He's been here working with everyone every single day. But we also felt it was important to process input from the community in multiple ways. That's why we hired Dr. Tammy Campbell from Scholars First Group to help us facilitate this process. This included listening sessions and surveys, and we asked and received input on leadership expectations from our community. Dr. Campbell gave us a presentation at our November 29th board meeting. At that time, she presented her findings and shared the data that was collected during the listening sessions. After hearing from Dr. Campbell, looking at the input from the listening sessions and surveys, coupled with what we have seen from John Boyd over the last year, we felt it was the best interest of the district to move John forward as a candidate for the permanent superintendent role. Now, we are all here to hear from Superintendent Boyd as he shares his vision for what his leadership would look like if he was to remain on as the permanent superintendent. I want to thank John for his interest in this role and want him to thank him for putting together this presentation this evening. So here's the plan for tonight. John's going to share his presentation. We're here in person, and there's also people that are joining us via Zoom. After the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for community members to ask Superintendent Boyd questions about his leadership vision. We'll have a microphone available, and so we'll ask you to raise your hand, and we will get that to you. People online will be able to share questions via the chat. All right, so at this time, I would like to go ahead and bring up Superintendent Boyd. Thank you.
I don't need that. Thank you. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can folks hear in the back okay? Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my vision for building the foundation for a future focused on student success. I had a little panic before the presentation because the slides weren't moving forward, and Diana told me, well, you have to turn the thing on. So I think it's on now, and I've got it. But I want to start with putting students in the center. It's something that that I always do, is put our students in the center and focus on them. So I want to start with my vision for student success. And it starts with the hope that 3 to 5 years from now, our students can say that these things are true. And I'm just going to read them. I am my true self at school, and I'm loved. I belong, I am seen, heard, and empowered. I see myself and others reflected in our learning and in our school. I am eager to learn, set goals, and work towards my future. I'm an independent learner who knows what I'm learning and why I'm learning it. And I thrive academically. We're going to come back to this in a little bit. I'd like to tell you a little bit about who I am. In addition to being a superintendent, I'm a husband, a father, a hooper. At least I pretend to be a hooper in that picture. I'm lucky I didn't hurt myself. That child took me to the well 3 different times and scored on me. So that's the story I probably shouldn't tell. I'm a coach, a teacher, a hiker, a brother, and a friend. And the left-hand picture, I'd like to introduce my wife, Annie Stewart, if she could stand up. She is she's a 29-year teacher veteran. She's been a social studies and English teacher. She's been an IB English teacher. She's been a district building coach. She's been so many things in education. She's been an athletic coach. She's my best friend, and I love her dearly, and she is my huge support, and I thank her. She actually helped me with this presentation. On the upper right is my son, Lucas Boyd. He is 28 years old. He's currently at University of Santa Barbara getting his master's degree in environmental policy and justice. And so I'm really proud of the work that he's doing. He's working with a think tank to help inform policy related to climate change and pushing legislation across the nation for that. My daughters at the bottom, Livy and Sophie, they're the ones that keep me humble. They make me laugh. They're my heart. And my daughter Livy to the left is currently working in early childhood education, and she's a head volleyball coach for a volleyball team in the Seattle area. My daughter Sophie is currently getting her degree in environmental sciences at Western Washington. What I'm most proud is not their degrees or their accolades, but I'm most proud of what they're doing in the world. They're not concerned as much about what's in it for them. They're really trying to make a big difference in the world, and particularly around climate change and working with children. So really pleased and excited about that. My father had a big impact on me, and he was also a scoutmaster. So he always said, leave the world better than you found it. And that's been resonated with me my whole life. He was also a builder. He could take apart a 59 engine and with hundreds, it seemed like when I was a kid, thousands of parts across the garage, put it back together and make it run. He built his own house that we lived in. He built the house for my brother, and he was really proud of his 2 sons, not me, that were also really, really good at building. Both of my brothers can put together anything, could build anything, not so much me. We had an uncle who ran an electrical business, and all of the boys circled through that business. And my 2 brothers were really good at it, and then it was my turn to do it. And so I went on the job for the very first day, and Uncle Art said to me, John, your brothers are excellent electricians. You're a good mixer. In other words, he wasn't going to need me on the job site the next day, and so I got gently released from that job. But I'm a builder in a different way. I'm a builder of people, a builder, a motivator, and of people. And this is me on the left in 1978 as the head coach of the Delridge Community Center team. That year we went 0-12. We never won a game. You imagine how desperate they must have been to have a 13 or 14-year-old be a coach in the first place. And I remember the very first game that we played, I called a timeout, and my coach, Ruben Martinez, was walking by, and I panicked, and I said, "Ruben, what do I do?" And he looked at me and he said, "You know what to do." In Ruben fashion, he winked at me and walked away, and when I picked up my jaw off the floor, I knew it was mine. I had to do this. I had to lean into this. So the next year, I coached him again. We added a couple players, and I kind of figured out how to coach, and we actually won the league and went into won a couple of playoff games. And I say this story because this was really my first leadership opportunity, and what I realized is my job, I can't go on the floor and play with the kids. I can't shoot the baskets, I can't dribble. I have to help them to do that, and I think leadership in the superintendent is like that. You need to be a cheerleader, a motivator, and a support. You need to have a good lesson plan where you can take these, where you can help motivate them. You need to help us get in good shape and have a good plan. And throughout my career, I've tried to be a builder in all that I've done, and this was my first leadership opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about those of you that may not know me, my journey in education. I'm not going to mention all of these things, but I've done a lot of things. I've been a substitute secretary. I know what it's like to be in an office and have a student come in with needing an ice pack and having to answer the phone, and the principal coming out of the office and saying, "Can you help me with this?" And all of those things that you do gives me great empathy and motivates me to want to support all the people in our system. I know what it's like to be a paraeducator for students with special needs. One of my jobs I had for 3 weeks was a one-on-one paraeducator for a student. He had a paper route, and the very first day, I was fast. I was in my 20s. I was fast, and they said, "Don't lose him." And of course, the kid ran off and he was gone. I lost him, went back to the teacher, and I said, "I'm so sorry I lost him." "Oh, don't worry about it. He does that. He'll come back." I said, "You could have told me that ahead of time." I've been a multilingual teacher, and at the time they called it a teacher that teaches English as a second language. At Denny Middle School, I started a brand new bilingual program, my first job out after my student teaching. I was told, "This is a brand new program. We don't have a curriculum for you. We don't know what it looks like, but teach and support the kids." And so, of course, went to work, did the best I could to build the program. And we ended up having a real successful run at that program. We worked with our families, we brought them in and taught them about the educational system. We had students from all over the world in Seattle. And so I had Somali parents, Somali mothers in my class. I had to kind of teach them to take it down a little bit, but really supported the education of our students. We developed a program, built a program that people came from all over the city to watch eventually after 2 to 3 years of fumbling through it. I was principal at Chief Sealth High School. Building on the builder theme, I had the opportunity to actually be part of the construction process in a $125 million project there. And when I accepted the position at Chief Sealth, it was a school that they were talking about closing down. It was a school that none of the students in the neighborhood were coming to. So we made some plans about recruiting and bringing our community in and asking them what did they want in a school. We were able to add an international baccalaureate program with support and help from our community. We were able to become a designated international school. We were fortunate in the timing of the construction, which gave us a lift, but 6 years later, we had the #1 wait list in the city of Seattle. And it wasn't because of what I did, it was because of what we did and what my ability to bring the community together around a common focus and a common mission to achieve something that has a lasting impact right now. My last position before coming here was at Quincy School District. Really proud of the work. Quickly, one of the highlights of my experience there was when in Little Quincy we had a Black Lives Matter march. And at the end of the march, there were people gathered around, and you know how that happens where you do a little talking circle, and was so proud of how folks in our community, who only 2 or 3 of them were African American, were out and they understood how to support our black community through the work that we had done in our equity coalition. Very proud of that. We built a high school, much like we've done here, built a high school, completely remodeled the district, refreshed our district. And that left picture in the up is Fred Ibarra, a friend of mine, who challenged me. He said, we only have 4 or 5 people in our music program. I'll bet you can't get students marching in our parade the following year. We had a principal transition, and so I went to work, made some calls, hired Patrick, who just perfectly timed it. So he was in this picture. I couldn't believe it. But really proud of what we were able to accomplish there in Quincy. So there's some lessons learned for me along the way as I've gone through all of the jobs and all of the things that I've done. And so I won't speak to each of them right now, but one of the things that I've learned is let the strategic plan guide your work. I've worked in the Seattle School District for 19 years, and the strategic plan really never got down to the end user. It was a pretty poster on the wall. Then I spent 3 years in the Highline School District with Dr. Susan Enfield, where it was just the opposite. They put plans around it and really executed around their vision to make big positive change for their students. And I'm a believer in the power of our strategic plan to be able to move us all forward collectively. I also believe that looking for leadership moments and opportunities, and for me, my leadership moment here, I think, was the levy failure and then the passing of the levy last year. And then stay in the course. Stay in the course, is something that when you do set your sights on, stay in that way, keeping focus, and moving forward. So Director Bocanegra talked about it when I arrived in Vancouver. February 1st, I started in Evergreen Public Schools. After the first week, I picked up COVID. The second week, we failed the levy. We then passed the levy. We had 2 giant COVID spikes. And we also then had to, after we passed the levy, go back out to people and say, hey, thank you for helping us with the levy, but we're going to have to trim our budget by $20 million. Really challenging circumstances, but even at the end of that, I was just so engaged and excited about what we had accomplished, where we'd been, and the potential of what we could do together. My wife and I, Annie, I was initially very interested in the position because we had been coming to Vancouver to do little vacations and looking at housing, and really had picked this as our next step somewhere or other when the job came out, talking to Director Bradford about it, and then interviewing again. I just became more and more interested and excited about it. I knew I was coming in difficult and extraordinary circumstances, but I'm so glad that I did. One of the first things I did when coming in is I engaged in some listening sessions, and I talked to about 200 people, principals, some teachers. We sat down with our union partners and asked all these questions, all the district leadership, even the board of directors. What is Evergreen Public Schools doing well, and what should be continued? What are some challenges that we need to address? And what other ideas and suggestions? What advice do you have for me as a superintendent? The top one was every single person, almost to a T, said there are a lot of good people in EPS, and they said it almost exactly like that. It was uncanny. And so that was a huge theme. There was a theme around trust, a theme around people's desire for a vision to strive towards. People wanted to be part of a winning team. I think a lot of folks in Evergreen had looked back in the past and felt really good about what they were doing, where they were going, the direction, and the district. And I think there was a little bit of that gone, and people wanted that. And almost everyone said in one way, shape, or form, excited towards welcoming me into the district, and excited that I had come up through the educational system. So what have we accomplished so far? And you notice I didn't say what have I accomplished so far, because it really is we. And so I'd like to go through a few things. The first thing, and I talked about this as a leadership opportunity, as you know, or may not know, last year in February, again, that was I think my 10th day on the job. We're here at the board meeting, and the news is coming out, and everybody's head goes down. The next day, we're sitting around my office table, and somebody said to me, they said, "How are you going to pass this levy?" I said, "I'm not." I said, "But we can if we pull together, work hard, organize ourselves on the communication side at the district and the campaign side of the district, we can get this done. But it isn't going to be easy. And so what I was able to do is to be that coach and help support people, help organize us, get a good lesson plan, get a good plan on both sides of this, give people a sense and hope and optimism that we can do this, lean in both areas, and we went from 42% to 55%. It wasn't me, it was us. You take any number of people, and two of them are sitting right here, Patrick Connolly and Sue Steinberg, take those folks out, we don't pass it. So many people like that, but I really feel good about my ability to bring the community together to get us to the point where we could get over the hump and win that election for our children. We've started building trust, and we have a long way to go in this district to get to the point where we have trust up and down our system. I've started with our leadership team, our school board. Our school board has been amazing, working together with a consultant to really develop some trust, to be able to get to know each other, to point our compass in the right way so that we could be the best we can for our students. Our superintendent leadership team has done that, and our senior leaders, and we've started from concentric circles moving out. With our principals, we've spent a lot of time. We've spent a little bit of time with our labor partners trying to make sure that we're communicating, we're being transparent, and we're supporting everybody up and down the system. Long ways to go, but I feel really good about the foundation that we've created related to trust. I talked a little bit about a strategic plan. These arrows really resonated with our principals when we put them up, and we said, what does this represent? And we said, well, that's kind of what we are right now. Our arrows are all pointing different directions. And so we talked about what would it look like if we could get all of our arrows pointing in the same way, if we get everybody kind of moving in the same direction so that everybody's not going, again, a lot of good people in Evergreen Public Schools, a lot of good people moving in different directions. So we've really been working on a common focus. So we started a strategic planning process, and I'm not going to get too much in the weeds, but I think it's really important because if you'll remember that earlier slide, I said, you know, I really believe in the power of a strategic plan, a strategic vision, carrying that out and moving forward together. We've started with our teaching and learning and our school environment, and we've begun to go deeper. Last year, a group of stakeholders got to this point where they had our strategic plan kind of drafted, but because of the COVID spike, the levy failure, the levy passing, all of the things, we really didn't get to the point where we could make it operational. But now that's the work that we're doing this year, and I'm so excited of what we're doing. Last year, that team came up with this vision that each person in the Evergreen Public Schools community is welcome, included, empowered, a member of our school district, and works together towards student success. I pushed a little bit on this to add the student success because we don't build relationships to build relationships. We build relationships to do a better job for our kids so that we can all be our best selves for our students. And so the student success piece was really important. We added that piece to it. And I tricked you a little bit to thinking that that was my vision at the very beginning. It's not. That is a collective vision that we've put together with 60 or 70 people, principals, teachers, classified staff, district staff, myself, board directors. We took 150 different thoughts and distilled them down to the essence of what we thought we wanted for our children. My job as superintendent is not to give you a vision. My job is to help us come up with a vision and move us together collectively, and I really believe that. So you'll see this repeated throughout the presentation because if you asked me what my vision was right now, this would be the one thing I'd keep referring to. It's a big part of what I think we need to be doing for our children. And it's something we've created together. Another thing is a vision, I love this quote, a vision without execution is just a hallucination. And Thomas Edison said that. Again, if you're a coach and you don't have a good game plan, if you don't execute that game plan, and you're not going to get anywhere and make a difference. So what we did, I borrowed from Principal Derek Garrison, approached his staff, and we said, we're going to really collectively focus on math, and we're going to do this district-wide. And he challenged his staff that if we can do 13% gain on the levy, we can at least do 13% gain in math. Part of what a good leader does, I think, is also shines a light in dark corners. This is one of our dark corners. I think if you look at the pencils there, this came out, by the way, almost a couple of days after the levy passed. So I felt like, again, taking the capital that I built with the community, let's really push hard on this. It's a tough thing to face into, but let's face into the fact that our math and our ELA and our science scores are lower than Battleground in Vancouver. And with all of the great people here, and I really believe that, I keep bringing that back because I think it's so true, we're underperforming. So we've put together a district goal. We've been working on that district goal all throughout the year. And I've been so proud of how our district leadership, our principals, and our teachers especially. Our elementary teachers have a brand new curriculum. They're just busting their butts to make that curriculum work. They're leaning into a whole different way of teaching and educating the students. We're holding true to our curriculum so that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum moving forward. I don't know if we're going to get 5%. I don't know if we're going to get 25%. That's not the point. The point is we're all leaning around. We're setting an ambitious goal. We're focused on one thing together. And we're practicing what it looks like when you have a good strategic plan. And so that's what we're doing, and I'm really excited about that focus. People ask me, why would I want to be here? And the answer is, why would I not? There are so many awesome people in Evergreen Public Schools, so many awesome things, not just people. But I want to start with the people. And I have started a new award called the MVP. And what I do is when I visit schools, I tried to visit schools at least twice last year, so we got to all 36 of our schools. Twice this year, I'm trying to do it 3 times, plus hopefully in the spring get in front of the staff and do a presentation around our strategic plan as that comes together and get people rallied and motivated around that. But this has just been amazing and Clay Russell at Pacific. Clay is a custodian. The impact that man has on that community, just the way he interacts with everybody, is absolutely outstanding. And you can see people get emotional when you just give them a little bit of credit for what they've done. And building on the theme of phenomenal people in Evergreen Public Schools, Clay represents that. Candace Tan. She supports the special ed program at HCA. Again, just an amazing person that goes above and beyond to support our students. Jean Callahan, she's the Secretary Registrar at Sunstead. Again, she just is amazing. She'll do anything that the principal asks, anything for students, anything for families above and beyond what is required of her. We have Kristen Fullerton at Silver Star going above and beyond and supporting the teaching and learning team there. We have Ruth Beggs. This was a fun one to give because she was nominated by a principal, and Ruth is helping to lead us around school improvement planning. So this bold math focus that we have, Ruth is helping to lead that effort. She's stunning. She does an amazing job, and she's really helped our principals understand what it means to execute a school improvement planning process, and Ruth is wonderful. Teresa Ort at Burton. I smile when I see Teresa. I've gotten to know her a little bit. She's just a ball of energy. She's teacher librarian there. She does videos for the kids. Anything that needs to be done in that school. This is maybe the 3rd day in the brand new school. There's a young man that we cut out of the picture because he looked a little surprised at me. I think I scared him a little bit with my size there. But amazing people. Amazing programs. I remember when I was in the Quincy School District and I was in the middle of the pandemic and everybody was just kind of tired and done and upset and drained. And I remember seeing this amazing choir video that came across that just went viral. And it brought us to tears. It really did. And when we looked into where that came from, Evergreen. So I had to look, where's Evergreen? Do people remember that? That was just stunning. I mean, it truly brought me to tears. It gave me a lift in a moment where I just needed it as a leader there. And our music programs are absolutely stunning. And I'm going to leave programs up: drama, music, athletics, CTE programs. And I think part of what a superintendent does and what I hope to do for you, should I be selected as the permanent superintendent, is to really be a cheerleader for us. We have so many amazing things to promote here. And while being a cheerleader out there, promoting, garnering community support, also challenging us internally, like the challenge around math, the challenge around our academics, to do better. And so there's so much to cheerlead around. There's so many phenomenal programs here. our facilities. And I purposely put I think this might be Riverview, I purposely put one of our older schools in here because they got a furniture refresh. But even our older facilities, we have brand new carpet, new furniture, and our facilities are just wonderful. Sue Steinbrenner, who's going to be retiring in here. We can't talk her out of it. We might have to tie her up to her desk, though. She's done a wonderful job there. I've had the pleasure to cut 4 ribbons. Again, I had really nothing to do with the passing of the bond and the building of the schools, but what a lift it is to our whole community. I mean, I'll get my numbers wrong, but 8 or 10 elementaries, these 4 new schools, all of the furniture requests. We're putting new choir rooms that I think Heritage got a new music room, Union's getting one. So all of these programs are not only something to celebrate, but they're going to lift up and elevate our students moving forward and help us build a culture of student success, and I believe that. It's a great opportunity. And our amazing community support as well. And I'm going to read these because I want to just make sure I'm getting this right. So the upper left is artist Sarah Folden helping Y East Middle School create their new Wolverine logo. She told the most compelling story about her experience as an artist and came there, and I'm not going to tell her story. I don't have permission to it, but the work that she did with our community was restorative for her, and it was phenomenal. And multilingual parents in the lower left, and I was fortunate enough to be, Adriana helped support that. I was there to participate in our Parents Honoring Hispanic Heritage Month, singing and dancing. We have community members volunteering to be reading buddies at Orchard. Vancouver Symphony Orchestra conductor Salvador, I'm going to butcher his name, Broughton's, visited Mountain View. Vancouver police officers running summer camp at Gila. And I think we're just scratching the surface here of what's possible in this community. If we're able to build relationships, if we're being able to reach out to folks and have those connections to garner their support. But what we have to do is we have to go out to our community and not say, what can you do for us? We have to say, what can we do for each other? We have to build those relationships so when it's time to go to the well, to ask for support and resources, we can do that. So what are the challenges? I would be remiss if I didn't bring up challenges. You would say, well, you left out the hard part. So we can't leave out the hard part. There are some big challenges. So what are those challenges in the road ahead? We know we're going to really set our sights on a strategic vision, a strategic plan, and we're going to execute around that. And we're going to have a vision of where we want to go. There are going to be bumps in the road, potholes. There are going to be landslides. Roads are going to be washed out. We're going to have to back up and turn around. But we're going to stay the course and stay on it and move forward. I love this young lady at Columbia Valley. She's fierce. Would you go through that? I don't think I would. But love this picture. I don't want to linger on the challenges, but I do think we need to talk about them. We have a budget challenge. We have $15 to $20 million budget shortfall for the following year. The year after that looks a little bit better and a little bit more promising. So if we can do what we need to do this year and get our budget right sized, we'll be better in the future. I talked about the academic performance. We're behind our peers and our other districts. I think we can do better. I know we can do better, but that's a challenge that we have to face up to. Enrollment, the dynamics of the Evergreen community are changing. And that's leading to an enrollment decline, among other things. The pandemic, some folks kept their kids home, are continuing to homeschool. We lost some students to the private schools. And we're just, more folks like my wife and I are moving into the community that don't have kids. So we're becoming a retirement community for Portland. In our little neighborhood, I can tell you that just about, 50-60% of the folks that live there come from Portland and have retired for the tax advantage there. So we have some challenges in enrollment. Enrollment is budget, and so that's something. Staffing. Every sector of the economy, in every area, staffing has been an issue. And I see Julie nodding her head, and she's in the banking business. But I was at a Vancouver roundtable with all businesses and community members, and everybody talked about their staffing shortage. It's something, we have 140, at one time we had 140 open special education para positions. And that's hard. And that's stressful for the other paraeducators supporting. It's stressful for the teachers that are trying to support the students. And it's stressful because we all love and care for kids and we don't feel like we have what we need on site to help them. So I think that we're looking up on that. Well, we'll be looking up. I think, unfortunately, the economy's slowing down a little bit, and hopefully we'll be able to fill some of those positions. Safety and security, we always need to make sure that we've got our eyes on it. They're always going to present challenges. We're working really hard to build our muscle memory around making sure that we can respond. We're working with the police department, with both Clark County and with Vancouver Police Department, and meeting regularly with them, talking about how we can do a better job of communicating, working together. And the last one, the pandemic effects. It's thrown a big monkey wrench in everything we've done. It's stopped the work that we started. It's produced people that have experienced trauma, not just our students, but our staff. And so that's a process, to get through that and to continue to work together so that we can, work our way out of that. But it's going to be a while. We've had, lots of effects of the pandemic that that we're going to have to pay attention to. So what's next? So my vision, and again, my vision really is our vision and what we're going to do for our students. And I'm going to read these again because I think it's worth us beginning to really believe this. I'm my true self at school and I'm loved. I belong, I'm seen, heard, and empowered. I see myself and others reflected in our learning and in our school. I'm eager to learn, set goals, work towards my dreams. I'm an independent learner who knows what I'm learning and why I'm learning it, and I thrive academically. And I believe that we're putting together a plan and working on the nuts and bolts of that we'll be able to execute toward this dream of having students 3 to 5 years. Wouldn't it be great if every student you ask could say that this is true? 3 years from now, my vision and my goal, my dream would be we go out for a levy and we get 60%. We're still going to have to campaign. We're still going to have to work. We're still going to have to build confidence with our community and not take it for granted. But my vision is we could go out and maybe ask for a little bit more resource too. Because we intentionally reduce the ask in order to get the thing passed too. So we want to be able to go back with confidence with our community in a way that we can garner a little bit more support. And in 3 years, my vision, my goal would be that that's the first time 60% with some effort, but we get that done. Enrollment will stabilize or increase. Enrollment eventually will stabilize. Right now we're in an enrollment decline for a while because we have the younger grades coming up and we've got a wave of smaller class sizes that are working its way through. But wouldn't it be great if we were just knocking out of the park so well, our academic achievement rose, our community relations improved, our trust up and down our system and with each other was phenomenal, and we'll see people come. We'll see people come back. I believe that. We'll see kids like this rushing to get into our front doors. So I have some ambitious goals that I started based on the conversations that I had with our community, the questions that I asked that I showed before. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to all the schools and I'm doing one-on-one interviews with one staff member that the principal chooses and a student. And it's been great. And one of the questions I asked the students is, if you had a magic wish, what would you wish for in school? And the one young lady said, man, I just wish the pizza was a little less greasy. So I said, do you want to really, is that the magic, is that you want to blow your magic wish and on that? And she said, yeah, I just want that pizza to be a little bit better. But I am learning lots of good things. I haven't gotten to the point where I've themed that, but just the opportunity to sit down. And the reason I'm doing that is, I sit up here, I buzz through buildings, we have 36 of them. I try to get in and out, see some people, talk to the principal, check on our math focus. What an honor and how much I'm learning, I can't tell you. It's indescribable, sitting down one-on-one with and just asking some wide open questions. If you had a magic wish, and I even asked that to staff, and it's just really interesting, and it's a great learning for me, and it'll help drive my work moving forward. But I have set some ambitious goals for me, and I'm not going to go through all these goals. And what I've shared with you today is just a tiny little piece of what I've been doing, what we've been doing. But I am just so excited and so thrilled at the direction we're going, the foundation that I feel like we've laid for future success, and I'd love to have the opportunity to be your permanent superintendent. Thank you. Oh yeah, you want to get a little drink of water?
All right, do we have questions for Superintendent Boyd? I think Mike's going to come around with the microphone.
Thank you. Hi, Superintendent Boyd. It's
Hello.
been such a pleasure getting to know you. And I'm happy to be here and to hear your story in
Thank
a little
you.
more depth. My name's Shannon Shambaugh, and I am been in the district for 20 years. I'm currently the only equity specialist in the district after budget cuts led to 3/4 of my team being cut last year. I have some notes here. So I wrote that equity is central to our strategic plan, and my little team led by Clarissa, who's here, and Jamila, are just working beyond capacity to meet the goals set out in our strategic plan for equity, and to improve those conditions for those furthest from justice. So my concern is that EPS has stated equity as a priority. However, we haven't dedicated the resources to make the difference we need to make. And I know we're at a budget shortfall. But I also know that other districts have found a way to do this. PPS has dedicated a district equity fund to pay teachers to attend things like equity meetings and also attend trainings through the Center for Equity and Inclusion. I know that, sorry, just a second. And to support staff to move from this awareness that we've really worked hard at building the last couple of years to action, right? And that's where I'm at right now, and the work that I'm doing is trying to move towards action. And what I've found is, for example, our district, most schools have about 30 minutes for an equity meeting once a month. And they're being asked to implement these equity transformation cycles and really do a bunch of really important work to get that 13% in math improvement. And with the funds that like PPS has for their equity budget, they require a 2-hour meeting, and they're able to pay their teachers for that work. So my question is, how will you prioritize our financial resources to ensure that equitable outcomes for our students? Because we can't meet our goals if we don't have the resources or structures to implement them. And without those resources, our equity goals are just turn out to be, a little bit more lip service and can feel like virtue signaling if we don't have the structures and the money to implement those goals.
Yeah. First of all, Shannon, thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for all the extra work that is created in your department. I know that you come with passion for the work, and so I appreciate what you've done. In my whole career, equity's been front and center for me. I've always worked in populations of the underserved and folks furthest from justice, educational justice, and so it's really super important to me. Last year was painful. It was painful for me. I'll get emotional just thinking about it. That was tough. We had $20 million cuts. We had to cut 110 positions. Fortunately, the majority of those were able to find positions back in the district. And so in the case of the diversity, equity, and inclusion specialists, they were the last out. And so by contract, because of the class of people that were reduced, we had to start with there. So that was, I just want to acknowledge the pain, and I acknowledge the work that you've done, acknowledge how our community felt that, and I did too. So one of the things that I have done with our equity leaders, and you're right, mighty team, with Clarissa and Jamila, we've sat down and we've started to have some conversations on what it looks like to be able to, have equity as part of everything we do. And that's the goal. And I know that we're far from that, but it's going to be everybody's job. the other realization that I had in talking to principals too about the diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're really passionate about it. You all have laid an amazing foundation for our teachers and our staff and our principals to be able to engage in this work. And so, a lot of the work fell on them, and they're already struggling with all of the things that we're asking them to do. So I understand the impact and I understand the concern. And one of the ways that we're working on the budget this year is we've started off by using our equity lens to develop a set of guiding principles for the budget reductions. And one of them is to ensure that budget reductions are furthest from our students, that stay furthest from students, furthest from educational justice, and those sorts of things. So we're focused on it. We've got a long ways to go to where we can say that if you look at the goals that we have for our strategic plan, that's a really deep equity goals in there that we're going to have to shoot for. So we'll continue to partner and work with our diversity, equity, and inclusion team and do the best we can to make sure that it's part of everything we do and that it's everybody's job. And I think that's the answer. It's probably not a satisfactory answer right now because the work is so deep, but the goal is to make that reality for all of us so that we can make that happen for our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Martin.
Did you say Jim?
Question. Jim Martin.
Jim, hi Jim.
Three-part question. I'll roll them all off for you, and then you can come back if I
might need to.
If I don't come. Okay, the first one. I guess you got the job, but in any time people get hired, the first one of the questions they ask is, where are you going to be in 5 years? So where do you see yourself personally in 5 years? Please don't give us a Russ Wilson answer. Well, I'll be here with a Super Bowl, when he's out the door.
Darn it, you took away my answer. I was going to say we're going to be cheering because we've achieved these things that we set out to do for our children.
The other thing, hiring. Hiring's a big thing with a superintendent.
Right.
It all comes down to you. And recently in the paper, we got a bad situation. So how are you personally handling that to prevent those sort of things from happening again? Slade Gordon, former senator, said that
I remember him.
You never hire bad people.
Right.
Okay? If you have a bad person, then you have to correct them. And so what are you doing to make sure that the employees in the district understand their full responsibilities? Okay? And the third one comes down to communication. I live about a block north of Burton School, and in that area there's maybe 10 kids. And because I got a vested interest in education, I talk a lot to kids. They didn't know about Running Start. They didn't know about Cascade Tech. That again, to me, comes down to communication.
Right.
So what is the...
You're saying the Burton Elementary students didn't know
I'm
about
sorry?
You're saying the Burton Elementary students didn't know about Cascadia?
No, I'm saying people in my neighborhood.
Oh, gotcha.
They didn't know about
Yeah.
Running Start. They didn't know
Yeah.
about Cascade Tech, the advantages of both of those.
Right.
And so what the assistant superintendent for secondary doing to get into the buildings and make sure those kids know those opportunities? Everybody talks about we need more mechanics. Okay, so that could be coming through the Cascade Tech, for instance.
Okay.
That's a great program. Okay, so I'll let you with
First,
1, 2, 3, and
yep,
you go
I got
with
it. First question, where do I expect to be in 5 to 7 years? It's about the amount of time that I plan to work, so I hope to be retiring from Evergreen Public Schools at that time, 5 to 7 years from now. In terms of hiring, I think a good example is the hiring of our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Charlene Williams. We did a real robust hiring process. We searched wide and far and promoted that position. We had 3 different pieces to the interview process with reference checks, and Dr. Williams just came in and won it. She's just phenomenal. So having a hiring process that is challenging, doing deep reference checks, and making sure that you have a lot of people involved in it. This is an example that I'll put forward to you with the hiring process. I take hiring really serious. My first mentor, Wayne Hashiguchi, it was the one thing he drilled into me when I was a beginning baby principal. He said, look, John, if you do one thing well, and you're absolutely right, hire good people. and your job will be a lot easier, and you'll be a lot more successful. So really believe in that. And then just in terms of communication, I know that we have a big communication department that does a lot of social media. They've really worked hard getting the message out to people. And you're absolutely right. Those programs are amazing. If you ever have a chance to go to Cascadia Tech and see the wonderful work that they're doing, we rely on our counselors and schools to help parents understand and know about those programs. Running Start, Cascadia Tech, Gila is another example of a phenomenal program we have here, Legacy Alternative Program. So getting the word out is a challenge, but I think we have people in place to be able to do that. So.
Thank you for your presentation, Superintendent Boyd. I am a language arts teacher in Evergreen Public Schools, and what I'm trying to understand is why did the school board announce their intent to permanently hire you and do this presentation tonight before they've told the public how anyone else can apply first?
I'm going to let the board answer the questions about the hiring process. I know Director Bocanegra is going to answer that, so I'm going to defer that to them toward the end here. So if we could hold that, that'd be good. There's some. Oh, I didn't know you had a microphone.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and briefly respond to that. First, there hasn't been a final decision made. And in the beginning, we kind of outlined all of the steps that came through with the process, how it started a year ago when we brought John as interim superintendent to what led us here today. So some of those opening remarks and that timeline is where we're at. And that's the process that we followed at this point.
Got some questions over there.
Glad to meet you tonight.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Trang Do. I'm a teacher at Fisher's Landing Elementary School, and I attended one of the listening sessions back in November. Mm-hmm. So I was very glad to see that the summary presentation was made available to us. And I especially was drawn to slide 6, which has I think it's called a wordle, which represents all the words that came out from one of the questions was, what are 3 to 5 characteristics of a superintendent to bring to Evergreen School District? And the one word that stood out the most, very prominent, was integrity. It's the feedback from the people who attended that. So my question is, I'm wondering, what do you bring in your leadership to address the stakeholders' concerns with integrity?
So the stakeholders' feedback, yeah, I think that's in line with what we were talking about with trust. And I think you gain trust and you have integrity when you do what you say and say what you do. You follow up on your commitments. You're transparent in your communications, and you try to work with all your stakeholders. So, and I said earlier, trust is built over time. It doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't happen quickly. It's just integrity is what you do when no one's looking. It's how you follow up on your commitments. I am one who will try to underpromise and overdeliver, and I think that helps people build trust and make you feel like you have integrity. It's one of my core values. When I put up my core values, I cut it out of this just because my presentation got a little long, but making a difference, integrity, and humility are 3 things that. And integrity and humility are aspirational, right? I try really hard every day to wake up and live my values around integrity. I think you'll find over time that trust will rise and that we'll be able to build the kind of community trust that we need to be able to do what we want for our kids. Thank you.
Hi, Tracy Barrows, school psychologist in Evergreen.
Hi, Tracy.
Hello. My question is about special education.
Yeah.
It is hard right now.
It is very hard.
There are a lot of challenges that we have. I work in 3 different elementary schools and know from talking to other colleagues in other buildings that in general, things are really hard right now. So my question is, what is your vision for special education and your plan to get there? And then I have a follow-up question. You talked in your presentation about staffing, and you recognize that staffing is a big issue. So my question is, what is your plan to attract and retain quality special education staff, including paraeducators?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So my vision for special education, I believe in the neighborhood schools model. I think that it's best for kids. And then when I go around and I talk to teachers and principals and staff, they don't disagree with that notion that that's a model that's best for kids. What people are challenged by is exactly what you've said: is we're understaffed. People haven't felt like they've had enough professional development to be able to execute well in that model. It's been a shift that has really stressed some buildings. Some buildings have, and it's cyclical. Some buildings have experienced that at different times. But we need to stay the course, I think, on the neighborhood model. We need to be able to provide the professional development to our staff to be able to do that. And we have to continue to work our rear ends off to try to get staff. It's been tough, and I'm not going to sugarcoat the issue related to staff. I'm worried about staffing for principals and counselors. We just don't have the people in the pipeline to fill the positions down the road. And folks aren't going into those positions. So it's going to be an ongoing challenge for us. We have to do the best we can to lead and provide professional learning for people, and get to the point where we have an ability to manage our students in the way that we need to keep our students' schools safe and productive. I really do think that the pandemic has exacerbated it. I think we all know that the pandemic's exacerbated the problem related to our neighborhood schools, and particularly our students with special needs. Hopefully over time we'll see that the needs will lessen a little bit and we'll be able to manage things differently.
Hi, my name is Lydia. I have a few questions. Which one of your goals and your visions are you planning on tackling first? Like when you go to the office tomorrow morning, what is your first real step? I'm a very list person, so I write things down in little tiny lists and just check them off. So I was wondering what your first real step is. And also, I'm a Running Start student, and so I've had the opportunity to go to college and see what that's like. Clark College has a lot of great of these programs that you're talking about wanting to implement in your school district. I was wondering if you had any vision to maybe bouncing off of them and partnering with them. And
Bouncing off and partnering with?
Clark College Community.
Yeah.
It's because they've done a lot of these things, and they've also been facing short staffing, but they've still managed to push through it. And also safety. I was wondering what you're planning on doing, what your vision with that is more in depth, because that's been a big issue, at least at my school. A lot of my peers don't feel safe at school. And I was wondering if partnering with the sheriff, I know they got cut for budget reasons, but if that would be a possibility in the future.
I'll start with the last question and try to remember the others. The first thing is your question about safety and partnering with our law enforcement. I suggested it, just talked about it briefly before. We're meeting with Vancouver Public Schools, the Clark County Sheriffs, and Vancouver Police Department on every other month. And we're doing just what you're suggesting, is we're sitting down and we're talking about the challenges, we're talking about communications. We've talked a little bit about the potential of bringing the SRO program back. The problem with the Clark County and Vancouver Police Department is they're short people. Their staffing problems are much bigger than even ours are, trying to find police officers, and then when they find them, they have trouble. They can't get them into the academy quick enough to build up their force. They're starting to be able to see now people applying, and they're hiring people, but then now there's the bottleneck with the academy. So we're doing that. Safety and security is really important to me. As soon as one of the first things I did here is I kind of called kind of a fake mock drill, and just to see what kind of muscle memory we had around that. And so we've been practicing every time there's a power outage, a student or a staff death, unfortunately. If there's a big safety issue, we come together around my table. We do an emergency operations team, and we work really hard to collectively solve the problem there. We're going to be doing a presentation at our next board meeting, the next or the one after that, about safety and security. I sat down with my safety and security director, Shane Gardner, and we listed all of the things that we're doing and to be able to communicate those out. But the first and most important thing that you do to keep a school safe is you have good, solid relationships with students. So if they see something, they say something, right? And then we have, concentric security measures, single points of entry. We train for drills. We do all of those things. And even with all of the things that we do, it's a challenge. And that's why I put it up there as one of the challenges. So that's it. In terms of partnering with Clark County, well, I haven't had a chance to do that. I'm in meetings with the president in a different setting, but they're on my list to be able to sit down with and talk through and do some partnerships with. The next step for me in terms of community partners is to get our diversity, equity, and inclusion team and all the folks that have our school supervisors and folks to be able to sit down and map all of the things all of the organization in the community that we have partnerships with and figure out who we don't and then start tackling them. I alone can't develop partnerships with the hundreds and hundreds of people, but if we get organized around that and divide and conquer that, I think we can do that really effectively. And what was setting my intention. So a very wise friend of mine asked me early in this year, how do you set your intention? Every day when I get up, not every day, every morning when I walk into my office, I have my values in front of me. I have my goals front and center. I look at my schedule, and I try to make sure that on my schedule for a week that I have activities that I'm doing that are related to those goals. So, and then I'm a big check-off to-do person too. I've got lists and lists and lists of things to do, and I try to get those done. But I also try not to get bogged down in emails and too much so that I can get out in the schools and understand and get to know and talk to people so that I can do a better job of leading. Did I answer all your questions? Okay.
Sorry. My name is Christy Sell. I am a former classified. I'm not good at this. I'm a former classified
You're doing great.
employee for 16 years, and 2 years ago I resigned from the district to focus on the 2 that I have at home instead of the 25,000 that I served while working. I would like the pencil graph. The standardized testing, the pencil graph. I've seen that graph now twice, and I'd like you to speak a little bit more on how you plan to get that up. It has come to my attention recently that our district curriculums don't match what's on standardized testing. To bring it back down to my own household, I have a son who is getting straight A's, but is at least 2 grade levels behind in every standardized test.
Is that in math or English language arts? Or
everything?
Everything, okay.
And this is a student that 5 years ago tested as gifted.
Yeah.
So there's a big disconnect that I'm very concerned about.
What ages are your students?
I have a 7th grader and a junior.
In high school?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. I can speak probably more on the math side and what we've done to try to make sure that it's not, I think it's less a fact that our curriculum doesn't match the standards and more of a fact that we're not following our curriculum. And so one of the things that we've been focused on with our principals is saying, the one thing we need to do, and if you look at the research is really clear that if every teacher does their own thing versus having a curriculum that everybody follows, your results go way up. So that's job number 1 is for us to follow the ELA and our math curriculums and work with our principals to support our teachers to be able to do that. It's a big change because we haven't done a great job. And let's be fair. The pandemic we've all created our own things. It's been combat teaching. We've got off track a little bit, so we need to get back on track with that. And so the other thing that, you can have a curriculum, but if you don't have powerful instruction that is supporting your students in the learning, that is rigorous and meaningful and pushes kids and makes them think, then you're not going to get the results that you can. And so that's another thing we're working with our principals to support our teachers to be able to do that. It's a long game. It's going to take some time. But our teaching and learning team has just done a bang-up job of kind of trying to right that ship and get us pointed in the right direction of really paying attention to what our adopted curriculums are in the district. So I am not an expert on the ELA curriculum, particularly at the secondary level, but I know what we've done around math, and I think that's a model for what we can do on the English language arts side as well. And we can do better. I really believe it. I think we have the talent, we have the ability, we have the people, and I'm confident that we're going to do better. There's no question in my mind. Sure, follow up. This is SBAC. This is a Smarter Balance Assessment. It's taken once a year in the spring. Yes, yeah. iReady is given 3 times a year. As you probably know, your kids come back complaining about it probably. I know mine did.
Hi, thank you. My name is Julia Apple. I'm a special education teacher at Hearthwood.
Yeah.
And my question is around inclusion. I'm really happy to hear that neighborhood schools is something that you support. Mm-hmm. I know that across the elementary schools especially, at least that's what I know best since that's where I am, there's very little consistency between how each school is doing inclusive practices. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering what your vision is to get us more aligned, or if you have... what's your plan for helping inclusion be successful? I'm very concerned. The history in this district, I've been here 20 years, and just before I came, we had tried inclusive practices and they had failed, and it was not the first time that it happened. And so I'm very concerned, and I'm not the only one who feels that could happen again. Mm-hmm. So do you have a plan, and what is it for helping that be successful this time?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I will tell you that it's not a surprise to me that we have folks in this room that are focused on the needs of our students with special needs, because there's some huge challenges right now with our students and supporting them. And our teachers love our kids so much that it's frustrating and hard to watch and hard to be part of, that we're doing things that are inadequate, with the staffing levels and with, the model shifting and the time that we really need to do the professional learning. We have some gaps. And I don't have all the answers to the gaps, but we've begun to have conversations. Dr. Williams and I have begun to have conversations about making sure that we're really being clear about what that vision is, working with schools to ensure that there's some fidelity to it. We want to give schools some autonomy to be able to design a program that works in their context, but I don't think we've done a good job of communicating that vision of what inclusive schools is. A lot of work to do. I'd love to sit here and tell you that I have this beautiful grand vision, and right now we're beginning to have those conversations to get to the point where we can be clear about it. So that's honest. Oh, Zoom question.
Yep, we have some questions from our audience on Zoom.
Okay.
And so 3 of them, Carl, Catherine, and Invisible Greater Vancouver, have all asked basically the same question, and questions similar to what's already been asked by the audience about our special education paraeducator positions and how we're going to fill those. So there are some more specific around what we can do around funding and getting the supports that they require.
Yeah, currently we are underfunded by $10 million by the state of Washington to provide our special education services. And we're working really hard. I know Director Bradford and Director Perkin and I are going to advocate for more resources. We're advocating for more resources across the state, and it'd be great if all the folks in this room loudly and clearly said we need to support our students with special needs. So we're underfunded by $10 million. Our levy funds make up the difference to be able to provide the supports that we can. And so that's part of the equation that we're hoping for to be able to do. I wish I had a good answer related to the staffing. It's a genuine dilemma. I mean, I challenged our staff because I kept hearing about staffing. I said, let's put up on the whiteboard all of the things that we're doing to recruit. I mean, we're going to Clark College. We're holding career fairs. They just filled up my whiteboard with things that we're doing. And right now, there just aren't people out there. So I don't have a good answer in the moment for how we're going to get more people into our buildings, other than just to continue to work really hard. All of us in this building tapping your neighbor to say, "Hey, we've got this job." I mean, I go to the grocery store and I'm trying to get the clerks to say, "Hey, how would you like to be a special educator in Evergreen Public Schools?" There's just so many options for people. The economy, there's so few people and so many opportunities for people right now that it's a real challenge. So I wish I had the answer. I don't. I do think the economy slowing down a little bit will help us in the long run. We did finally complete negotiations of our contract. Hopefully the word will get out about the increases in salaries and help us a little bit too.
All right, the next question comes from Faye Baker. And she writes, I have had students in EPS for 20 years. One consistent issue is complaint resolution with transparency. Students often have grievances, but there is no formal reporting system for students that provide follow-up. This is huge for staff that exhibit a repeated behavior that is never addressed. My students have gone to counselors and other staff members with complaint concerns and are told that they will take care of it, but the issue persists. I feel this is the definition of students being seen and heard.
So, prior to my arrival, I had heard that, and I read some things prior to coming, that we have some challenges with our complaint processes. So one of the first things I did is I pulled folks around the table and said, what do we need to do this? And I identified an individual to help monitor and track all of our complaints from our schools, so that we're more systematized around that. We have a long ways to go. We're working on a new harassment, intimidation, and bullying process to make sure that when there is a complaint, that we have ways of monitoring and tracking and making sure there's follow up to that. And I know our HR department works with principals, and we're really crystal clear about what their responsibilities are in terms of reporting. And so it's a work in progress, but we're trying to take a step in the direction of making sure that our kids do get their needs met in that way. And hopefully, the main thing I think we need to do is create a culture where kids are heard and seen. And that when a kid comes up to a counselor and comes up to a teacher, comes up to a principal, comes up to me, that we, first of all, understand and know how we need to respond. And secondly, we take it seriously and respond, and work with our kids so that they feel like we're taking them seriously as well. Some of the challenges around complaint processes too is that, it's a huge system that we need to make sure that all of our staff are trained, and we're working that way so that they know the processes and the procedures, so they can fill out complaint forms and make sure they get to the proper people. But it's a work in progress.
All right, a couple more questions on Zoom. This one is about equity. So as a parent and grandparent, I would like to know what makes you the best candidate for supporting equity and the diverse needs represented in our district. And I'm not sure who that was from, but we read their part of the question.
Well, I can tell you that again, I've spent my whole life working in communities where there are high levels of poverty, that students that are underserved, and I've my whole career has been devoted to trying to level playing fields for students furthest from justice. I've worked as an ESL teacher, a bilingual teacher. I've been a teacher, an English as a second language teacher, and working in a school with 100% free and reduced lunch as a principal of a newcomer center for immigrant and refugee students. I have worked as a principal at Chief Sealth, where we really worked hard to make sure that all of our students had access to the programs that we had. In Quincy, we put together a race and equity coalition, and we were the first district in the state of Washington on the east side of the state to have a race and equity policy and procedure related to that. We were able to diversify our workforce significantly, tripling the number of people of color in our workforce. So I don't know that I can't say that I'm the best, but I can say that I have a heart for making sure that all students are taken care of, that equity is front and center for me. It's part of the fabric of who I am. It's part of also what's really important to me, and I have some real robust goals around making sure that we continue to move forward with our equity work, even in the light of the challenges that we have last year with the staffing piece.
All right, last question on Zoom. This one's from Mary Elias, and she specifically calls out, at Silver Star, we've lost paras due to pay, and then do we have a plan in place to increase para pay? Kind of back to that question about para educators and staffing.
Yeah, we just negotiated a new contract that did increase paraeducator pay in the building. And I don't have the specifics around the numbers of that, but I think anywhere from 8 to 12%. That's not enough. We know that we're falling behind with Vancouver. We're in some really challenging budget circumstances that really does, we went as far as we thought we could without exacerbating our $15 to $20 million budget shortfall. But my hope is that after, next month will be the first month that the new payroll rates will be reflected in people's checks, I believe next month. So I'm hoping that that'll give people a boost and could attract and retain more people.
All right, well, with that, I think that's all the questions for this evening. I want to thank everyone again for coming this evening to hear Superintendent Boyd's presentation. It was fantastic. Thank you for being here to present that to us. Hope everyone has a great night, and the board will continue to keep you updated with our next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the difficult,